we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here. Good evening and welcome. We are so excited that you're here for the Polk Wellness Professionals speaking event with Dr. Michael Greger. Yay! My name is Liz Antea, and I'm co-chair of Polk Wellness Professionals along with Debbie Zimmerman. Polk Wellness Professionals are individuals in the Polk County area who have a passion for wellness and a love for our community. Our mission is to collaboratively promote wellness leadership and a culture of health in Polk County. Our vision is to provide professional support and to foster a community of active, health-conscious citizens.
Hi, everyone. And I am Debbie Zimmerman, of course, co-chair with Liz here. Just a little bit about Polk Wellness Professionals. We've actually been an organization for 13 years now. Go us. And we have been working in the Polk County area to make real differences where we live and where we work and where our families call home. So that's very important. As cited in Dr. Greger's new book, How Not to Age, quote, worldwide each year, physical inactivity has potentially accounted for more than 10 million years of healthy life lost. But what we eat may account for nearly 20 times that amount. So do the math, everyone. According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the most comprehensive and systematic analysis ever undertaken on the causes of death, the #1 killer in the United States and on a planet Earth is bad diet. Unhealthy diets have shaved hundreds of millions of disability-free years off people's lives annually. We knew we had to do something. We had to make it big, and we had to bring the leading world's expert in nutrition to Lakeland, Florida. We were planning, yes, give it up for Dr. Greger. We were planning this event back in 2019, and Dr. Greger was scheduled March 23rd, 2020, and unfortunately, March 15th, 2020, we all know what happened. And we got the message that Dr. Greger could not attend, and it was really bad.
We want to thank and recognize our wonderful sponsors tonight that have helped make this event come to life. So first of all, we want to offer a big thank you to our silver sponsor, HotWorks, who has a table right outside. Yes, I'm a member of the HotWorks gym, and they've got a sponsorship table. Hopefully you've gone by. If you've not, please do so right after the talk. We also want to thank our bronze sponsors, FidoFit, Stahl & Associates Insurance, Chat and Chew, Salad Master, Club Pilates, Reliance Matrix, First Ray, and the Natural Medicine Center and Holistic Care and Recovery for the very generous support. So please try to visit their tables, like I said, if they haven't already. They have been wonderful in supporting this event. So please also know that after Dr. Greger's presentation, there will be a limited time for Q&A. So if you have a question, please jot it down and get it ready. We do have a microphone at the front here. We'll probably limit that to 15 to 20 minutes. He's had a long day. This is his second talk today. So we do appreciate him kind of going the distance. So he has already generously also agreed to do some other book signings, so we appreciate that as well. It'll be right outside. If you weren't able to get it signed earlier, How Not to Age. And if you haven't bought it already, if you haven't seen, Books A Million graciously agreed to come here to sell them on site tonight, so that was awesome as well. So now I'd like to have Debbie introduce you to the star of the evening, Dr. Greger.
Okay. Dr. Greger is a physician, New York Times bestselling author, and an internationally recognized speaker on nutrition, food safety, and public health issues. A founding member and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, Dr. Greger is licensed as a general practitioner specializing in clinical nutrition. He is a graduate of the Cornell University School of Agriculture and Tufts University School of Medicine. Dr. Greger has lectured at the Conference of World Affairs, the National Institutes of Health, and the International Bird Flu Summit, among countless other symposia and institutions. He testified before Congress, has appeared on shows such as the Colbert Report, and was invited as an expert witness in defense of Oprah Winfrey at the infamous meat defamation trial. In 2017, he was honored with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine with its Lifestyle Medicine Trailblazer Award. His books, How Not to Die, the How Not to Die Cookbook, How Not to Diet, the How Not to Diet Cookbook, and How to Survive a Pandemic were all New York Times bestsellers. And I do believe his latest book, How Not to Age, hit the press as a New York Times bestseller and on December 5th, 2023. Dr. Greger has also appeared in several movies. He's a movie star, folks. So get his autograph, including What the Health in 2017, The Game Changers in 2018, and most recently, Seaspiracy. You got to see these movies, 2021. Dr. Greger's goal, sparked in his youth and galvanized over the course of his medical career, is to bypass the middleman and feed important, often life-saving information to the public. That is you. All proceeds from his speaking engagements and from the sales of his books and DVDs are donated to charity. His 501c3 nonprofit, www.nutritionfacts.org, is the first science-based, non-commercial website to provide free daily videos and articles on the latest discoveries in nutrition. Yes, give him a hand. Yes.
All right, and to that end, we do want to let you know that the audience is allowed to make any sort of contributions or donations. We have donation boxes in the back of the room. This is a church after all, right? If you feel so led. So there are 2 old-fashioned collection bins at the entrance if you want to donate cash to help in his efforts, or you can simply visit Dr. Greger's website and click on the donate button to give electronically. All right, so we're thrilled to ask you to please help us welcome the star of the show, Dr. Greger.
All right. Let's give me some slides. There we go. Because the single greatest risk factor for most of our killer diseases is how old you are, one could argue that the leading cause of death is actually aging. The rate of death increases exponentially for age-related diseases such as heart disease, cancer, stroke, dementia. So yes, within the same age bracket, having a high cholesterol can increase your risk of heart disease up to 20-fold, but an 80-year-old may have 500 times the risk of having a heart attack compared to a 20-year-old. Right? Now, of course, and the reason that we focus on things like cholesterol is because it's a modifiable risk factor. But what if the rate of aging was modifiable too? My inspiration for writing How Not to Age was this consensus document, Interventions to Slow Aging in Humans, compiled by the top researchers in the field, the likes of Longo, Sinclair, Fontana. They were brought together to identify the most promising strategies to combat aging. And then they identified a list of essential pathways. For example, drugs that can block the hormone IGF-1, or drugs to block the pro-aging enzyme mTOR. But I realized, wait, every single one of these could be modulated with diet. That became the opening section of the book. For example, boosting something called autophagy. At any time, most of our cells are producing and assembling more than 10,000 distinct proteins, each of which can become misfolded or damaged at any time, requiring a cleanup in aisle 3, and that's where autophagy comes in. From the Greek words for self-eating, it's a housekeeping process by which defective cellular components are broken down and scrapped for spare parts. This doubles as both salvage operation and quality control, renewing our cells in a sort of cellular reset. As one review put it, the janitor is the undercover boss. Self-digestion for lifespan extension. Enhanced autophagy can delay aging. But unfortunately, our ability to take out the trash declines with age. Now, the drug industry is eager to pharmacologically modulate autophagy to combat aging, but we can do it naturally. One way is through fasting. Unfortunately, autophagy doesn't really maximally ramp up until a day or two of fasting, which may be too long to go unsupervised. Fasting longer than 24 hours should probably only be done under medical supervision, preferably in a live-in clinic. It's not just legalistic mumbo-jumbo. For example, normally our kidneys dive into sodium conservation mode during fasting, but should that response break down, we could rapidly develop an electrolyte abnormality that may only manifest with vague symptoms like dizziness or fatigue, which could easily be dismissed before it's too late. Thankfully, there's another way to activate autophagy. You can fast or go fast. Exercise induces autophagy. As one of the researchers said, I've always known exercise was good for you, but when we found out it increases autophagy, I finally got a treadmill. You have to do it enough, though. Autophagy is activated after 60 minutes of moderate intensity activity like brisk walking, but only 20 minutes fails to move the needle. What about diet? Any foods to avoid? Well, acrylamide can inhibit autophagy. Acrylamide is a toxin found concentrated in French fries and potato chips that's formed during the frying process. The fact that acrylamide exposure is associated with as much as double the risk of premature death across the board is consistent with an anti-autophagy effect, but diminished lifespans amongst eaters of fatty, salty snacks isn't exactly a revelation. You don't know if it's cause and effect until you put it to... There we go. Before being asked to eat a bag of potato chips every day for a month, study subjects were given weeks of boiled potatoes mixed with the same amount of salt and fat as the chips. And compared to the fatty, salty, boiled potatoes, their C-reactive protein levels shot up 50% on the chips, suggesting chronic ingestion of acrylamide-containing products induces a pro-inflammatory state. Though deep frying causes the formation of all manner of undesirable foodborne toxicants, so we can't be sure it was the acrylamide. As one of the earliest geriatric medicine textbooks put it back in 1949, frying is an abomination. If you just must have your French fry fix, air frying produces 90% less acrylamide. Anything that can help? Well, starving yourself generates discomfort, but there is something that activates autophagy that many people find comforting: coffee. At a human equivalent dose, both regular and decaf rapidly induce autophagy within hours in mice and can extend the lifespan of some rats. But what about in people? Well, in humans, We only have observational research, but to date, about 20 studies have followed more than 10 million people over time, and those drinking 3 cups of coffee a day have 13% lower risk of dying from all causes put together. And decaf appears to be just as protective, so it's not the caffeine. Coffee contains more than 1,000 bioactive compounds. The polyphenol chlorogenic acid is the most abundant antioxidant, so researchers started there, and indeed, it was found to induce autophagy in human cells. More than 100 different brands of coffee were tested, and chlorogenic acid levels vary by more than 30-fold. Interestingly, the major contributor to this wide range was Starbucks, with its extremely low antioxidant content, thought to be because they roast their beans so dark they destroy it. Instant coffee seems fine from a chlorogenic acid content, and brewed has more than espresso. Paper filtered is the best, though, because it traps the cholesterol-raising compounds in coffee, perhaps explaining why those drinking filtered coffee had even lower mortality than those drinking unfiltered coffee. Any food components that can activate autophagy? Spermidine. The longevity elixir, spermidine. Don't be put off by the name. Spermidine and its byproduct spermine are actually found throughout the body. When it was later independently discovered in the muscles and the brain, it was called musculamine and neurodine until they realized, oh, it's all the same compound, and so naming rights defaulted to the less palatable original. Our body can make it from scratch, but we can also boost levels by eating spermidine-rich foods, which is good news because their spermidine levels tend to decline with age, dropping by more than half by the time we reach our 50s. This decline is seen across the biological spectrum with one remarkable exception. Naked mole rats, also known by their more cuddly nickname, sand puppy, considered to be a non-aging mammal, perhaps in part because they're able to maintain high levels of spermidine into old age, something you also see in human centenarians. Hundreds of women in their 40s through 80s were followed for 20 years, and after looking at 146 compounds in their diets, the single most predictive of longevity, spermidine. Spermidine intake is linked to lower mortality. Those who consumed the most spermidine had a reduced risk of death from all major causes, which is what you'd expect from an anti-aging compound. To prove cause and effect, extra spermidine was fed to animals, and induction of autophagy by spermidine promotes longevity, increasing lifespans of mice, for example, by as much as 25%. In a database of more than 1,000 life-extending compounds, among the small subset with the fewest side effects, spermidine has the largest documented lifespan extension. This led some to propose that spermidine may be an anti-aging vitamin. When we're younger, we seem to be able to make enough. But as we get older, we may need to start ensuring we're getting enough through our diet to maintain autophagy into old age. Well, if spermidine is an anti-aging vitamin, where is that vitamin found? Beans. Only here would I get applause for beans. Beans are said to have the highest natural amounts. A fermented whole soy food called tempeh tops the list, along with plain white button mushrooms, though pig pancreas does take the bronze. While some have suggested the genetic engineering of spermidine-rich crops, there are already a plethora of naturally spermidine-rich foods. The single most concentrated source is wheat germ with 2.5 milligrams of spermidine and just the 7 grams in a tablespoon. It's also the cheapest source at 2 cents per milligram. You can't get a lot of pancreas for 2 cents. But does wheat germ actually do anything? Let's randomize people to some dinner rolls and find out. A randomized double-blind pilot in which older individuals were secretly slipped some spermidine in the form of wheat germ baked into bread rolls, or placebo rolls with wheat bran instead. And those with mild dementia improved way beyond all available anti-dementia drug treatments so far. Admittedly, that's not saying much, but what's the harm of sprinkling a little wheat germ on your food? The latest Alzheimer's drugs don't appear to work at all. All you get for your $56,000 is a dramatically increased risk of swelling or bleeding into your brain. When the FDA approved it anyway, the head of the American Geriatric Society replied, "My head just exploded." So, to wrap up this section, autophagy is considered the primary system for cleaning the body from the inside out. And we can boost autophagy with aerobic exercise, skipping the fries and chips, drinking coffee, and eating specific foods to reach a target of 20 milligrams of spermidine a day. I offer similar diet and lifestyle takeaways for each of the other 10 anti-aging pathways, but I also want to touch on the other 3 major sections of the book. Part 2 focuses on the diets and lifestyles of the healthiest and longest-lived populations around the world. Why do some live to be 100 and others not? It's not just a matter of picking better parents. Studies following identical twins show only about 25% of the difference in lifespan between people is determined by genetics. So what can we do for the majority over which we may have some control? That's what we have the blue zones for. You know, the media loves stories about hard-living centenarians who attribute their longevity to some combination of lard, vodka, and favorite brand of cigarettes. But how do the oldest and healthiest really eat and live? These blue zones are areas of exceptional longevity around the world where they may have up to 10 times the rates of those reaching triple digits, named for the color a demographer used to map these longevity hotspots. What lessons can we learn? The Blue Zones organization distilled findings from more than 150 dietary surveys from the world's longest living people to create a set of 10 food guidelines. The foundation of the Blue Zones food guidelines is make your diet at least 95% plant-based, avoiding highly processed foods, emphasizing beans as the healthiest source of protein, water as the best beverage, and nuts as the healthiest snack. That's the foundation. The final 5 guidelines are to go easy on fish, eliminate eggs, slash sugar, reduce dairy, and retreat from meat, noting that Blue Zone centenarians only eat about 2 ounces of meat or less about 5 times a month. In terms of lifespan, eating a burger may cut one's life as short as smoking 2 cigarettes. So if it wouldn't even occur to you to light up before and after lunch, maybe you should choose the bean burrito instead. Now, there's certainly ways to make meat safer. For example, one of the ways whole food plant-based diets can help is by reducing the load of gerontotoxins. These are age-accelerating toxins such as advanced glycation end products, also known as glycotoxins or AGEs, an acronym intentionally chosen to emphasize their role in age-related diseases. These toxic AGEs occur naturally in animals, but dry cooking methods can generate 10 to 100 times more. When muscle cells rupture under dry heat, highly reactive compounds combine with blood and body sugars to form AGEs within the meat. So even without cutting down on meat, you can significantly cut down on glycotoxin intake just by switching up cooking methods. The safest way of cooking meat are moist methods, such as boiling, poaching, steaming, and stewing. Check out what happens when people are randomized to a meal of fried or broiled chicken breast and veggies, or the same meal with the same ingredient, including the oil, but with steamed or boiled chicken breast. That single high AGE meal with the broiled breast induced a profound impairment in artery function within hours. Now, the steamed chicken still impaired artery function, but significantly less than when fried or broiled. So we can eat an age-less diet by switching to moist methods, for example, but dietary approaches are said to have zero commercial value. And hey, stewed chicken may be less tasty, so why not just take a drug to block the absorption of AGEs every time you eat? It does lower your blood levels of AGEs, but that's because the quote-unquote drug is just activated charcoal, like when people, overdose on drugs or, are poisoned. I'm sure our AGEs would also go down if we chased our chicken with a little, ipecac too. There are a number of shared Blue Zone lifestyle characteristics: family coherence, avoiding smoking, daily exercise, social engagement, but plant-based nutrition appears to be the principal component, alone accounting for about half the difference in lifespan. No surprise, since the number one risk factor for death in these United States is the American diet. Unsafe sex is bad. A sedentary lifestyle, bad. Alcohol and drugs, especially tobacco, bad. But cigarettes only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills many more. We are what we eat, which is good news because it means we have the power. Changing from a more typical diet to a more optimized diet, starting at age 20, would be expected to increase the lifespan of women by about 11 years, men by 13 years. The largest life expectancy gains would be made by eating more legumes, right? Beans, chickpeas, lentils, split peas. So if there's one thing we could eat, legumes for longevity, right? Hummus for health. Then comes whole grains and nuts and eating less meat. Now, for the few of us who aren't 20 anymore, not to worry, starting to eat healthier at age 60 could still mean adding, 8 or 9 more years to your lifespan. Even starting as late as age 80 could add years. Changing your health destiny can start tonight at supper. Or is it? It's a little late. All right. Tomorrow morning at breakfast. All right. I'll give you till breakfast. And it doesn't take much. The NIH AARP study, the largest forward-looking study on diet and health, as was mentioned before, based on its 6 million person years of observation, replacing just 3% of caloric intake from animal protein with plant protein, was associated with a 10% decreased risk of overall mortality. Just swapping 3% of all the animal protein sources, eggs, were found to be the worst. Swapping in 3% of plant protein for egg protein was associated with twice the benefit, 20% lower mortality, having scrambled tofu instead. But does eating healthier actually slow down aging? Adopting a plant-based dietary pattern, especially when rich in healthful plant foods, was associated with a substantially lowered pace of aging. All we need now is an interventional trial to show cause and effect, and here we go. Randomize hundreds of women to a diet centered around healthy plant foods, or to exercise, or to neither. And though the physical activity alone sadly failed to actually slow down the rate at which they aged, those in the plant-based dietary intervention group had a significant slowing of biological aging. Of course, it's not just about adding years to your life, but life to your years. An unhealthy aging index was devised to measure not just physical health, but functional impairments, vitality, mental health, substituting even just 1% of calories from plant protein for animal protein appeared to lead to significantly less deficit accumulation, and swapping out 5% may reduce the risk of dying from the greatest deficit of all, dementia. That may explain why those who don't eat any meat at all may be up to 3 times less likely to become demented later in life. But again, it's not all or nothing. In fact, the worst thing about humanity's diet is neither animal nor vegetable, but mineral, sodium. Here are the top 5 fatal flaws of our diet. Millions of deaths every year attributable to not eating enough whole grains, not enough fruit, not enough nuts and seeds, not enough vegetables. But the single deadliest ingredient in humanity's diet is something we get too much of, and that's salt, our #1 dietary risk factor for death. A recent whopping study, for example, found that those who salted their food at the table at age 50 appeared to have a 2-year lower life expectancy than those who didn't. So, swapping out the salt shaker for some salt-free seasoning or salt substitutes could potentially add years to your life. How do we know it's cause and effect? 5 kitchens at a veteran's retirement home were randomized into 2 groups for a few years, offering meals salted either with regular salt or, unbeknownst to them, a 50-50 blend of regular salt, sodium chloride, with a salt substitute like these, potassium chloride. The kind of salt was the only difference between the meals, and cardiovascular disease death rates plummeted 40% in the folks getting the reduced sodium blend. The new difference in life expectancy between the 2 groups at age 70 was equivalent to that which would have occurred naturally in 14 years, meaning that simply switching to even half potassium salt, for which you wouldn't even be able to taste the difference, appeared to effectively make people more than a decade younger when it came to the risk of premature death. What do the likes of the Salt Institute have to say about public health recommendations to reduce sodium intake? In testimony before Congress, the presumption that healthier diets would cut healthcare costs was challenged. Indeed, one processed food defender testified, healthcare expenditures increase if lifespan is prolonged. Now, if people eat healthier and live longer, it can be more expensive. Noting that if tobacco were banned, the increase in expected lifespan would increase the cost of care of old people. Think how expensive it would be if people started taking better care of themselves and didn't conveniently die on time. Happy to cover other foods in the Q&A, like what about fish, what about red wine, et cetera, et cetera. But let's move on to part 3. What can we do to preserve our bones, bowels, bladder, and circulation, our hair, hearing, and hormone balance, our immune function, joint health, our minds and our muscles, sex life and skin, teeth, vision, and finally, our dignity in death? Let me share a few quick pearls. For example, did you know that 85% of the age-related bone fracture risk has nothing to do with your bone mineral density? That's just been drilled into our heads by Big Pharma and a billion-dollar bone density screening industry. Fractures are primarily due to falling, not osteoporosis, so it's the age-related muscle loss and impaired balance that may be breaking most of our bones, which is good news because there's something we can do about it. 7 randomized controlled trials found that strength and balance training can cut fracture rates nearly in half, and that's just during the trial. In the 5 years after this one-year study ended, those who had previously been randomized to the strength and balance group suffered 74% fewer fractures. That's far more effective than osteoporosis drugs like Fosamax that can cause fractures, what are called atypical femoral fractures, in as many as 1 in 300 users. The reason we call these fractures atypical is that they occur not after a fall or trauma, but just during routine activities like walking, twisting at the hip, or even just standing still. Thanks to the drug, your femur, your thigh bone, the biggest bone in your body, just cracks in half. Too cruel an irony from a drug that's supposed to protect your bones. This is what it looks like on X-ray. Ouch. After bones, I talk about preserving your bowel function in chapter number 2. Randomized constipated diabetics to either cookies containing a tablespoon of ground flax seeds or flax-free placebo cookies for 12 weeks. And not only does the flax improve constipation symptoms, but resulted in an 8-pound weight loss over placebo, 25-point lower blood sugars, an astounding drop in hemoglobin A1C, and a 17-point lower LDL cholesterol, all for about 10 cents a day of ground flax seeds. For a head-to-head test between flax seeds and psyllium, sold as Metamucil, a third cookie group was added with 10 grams of psyllium, and the flax seeds beat out psyllium for constipation, weight, blood sugars, and cholesterol, and is about 4 times cheaper. Flax seeds were also directly compared to the prescription laxative known as lactulose and worked even better. Bladder function. The prevalence of overactive bladder syndrome increases with age, reaching 1 in 3. No wonder bladder-relaxing drugs are a multi-billion-dollar industry, yet may only reduce bathroom breaks by a half a pee a day compared to placebo. But a quarter teaspoon a day of dried cranberry powder worked nearly 4 times better, about 2 fewer daily trips to the bathroom over placebo, and that's without the drug's side effects: dry mouth, constipation, sedation, impaired cognition, urinary retention, and the visual disturbances that cause 2/3 of users to stop taking these drugs, whereas cranberries are just, tangy? Urinary incontinence is a common problem among older adults, particularly women, thanks to childbirth. Systemic menopausal hormone therapy like Premarin can actually make it worse, though local vaginal estrogen may help. But what works 5 times better than estrogen cream, though? Kegel exercises, pelvic floor exercises, as I detail in the section Jacked in the Box. For men, urinary issues are more an enlarged prostate problem, having to get up multiple times, wee hours of the night. Cranberries to the rescue again. Even just 1/8 of a teaspoon a day of dried cranberries, powdered cranberries, can significantly improve prostate symptoms. You can buy cranberry powder in bulk at a cost of less than a penny per day. What about saw palmetto, the most common herbal supplement used for prostate symptoms, based on dozens of randomized controlled trials involving nearly 5,000 men? No clinical benefits. But pumpkin seeds work. More than 1,000 men with prostate symptoms were randomized to either about a tablespoon a day of plain pumpkin seed kernels, or a proprietary pumpkin seed extract, or a placebo. The study was funded by the drug company that made the supplement, but supplement totally flopped, but the pumpkin seeds themselves worked. Pumpkin seed oil was pitted against the leading drug for hair loss in women, a little less than a quarter teaspoon applied to the scalp once a day versus a dose of the drug, and they both worked. but the drug worked better. Now, rosemary oil, however, may be more closely matched. 100 balding men were randomized to twice-a-day minoxidil, like Rogaine, versus a rosemary lotion. Significant comparable improvements in hair counts in both groups. The rosemary lotion appeared to work as well as the drug. I wish I'd known about it. If you want to give it a DIY try, you can pre-mix about 10 drops of rosemary essential oil to each fluid ounce of your favorite lotion and rub a quarter teaspoon into your scalp twice a day. Cost-wise, that much rosemary oil would come out to be about $0.01 per week. Let's move from hair highlights to hormones. I touched on how menopausal hormone therapy can increase the risk of urinary incontinence, but that's not all. If 1,000 postmenopausal women take the standard hormone regimen for 10 years, you not only expect 876 extra cases of urinary incontinence that they wouldn't have had otherwise, but 9 more cases of invasive breast cancer. 8 more cases of heart disease, probably 22 more cases of dementia, 21 more cases of gallbladder disease, 9 more strokes, and 21 more blood clots, though not a single partridge nor pear tree. However, hormone therapy is highly effective in decreasing menopausal hot flashes. Is there any way to keep cool without the clots and cancer? In the U.S., menopausal hot flashes are considered inevitable, but there isn't even a word for hot flash in the Japanese language. This may be due to their greater consumption of soy foods, but you don't really know. Harvard funded a randomized crossover trial of a half a cup of unsalted soy nuts a day and achieved over placebo a 40 to 45% reduction in hot flashes within 2 weeks. Given that a plant-based diet may also be effective in managing menopausal symptoms, researchers decided, hey, let's combine the two, a plant-based diet and whole soybeans. In fact, 2 randomized controlled trials found that plant-based nutrition with a daily half cup of cooked whole soybeans, like out of a can, can reduce the number of serious hot flashes by 84 to 88%. Overall, most randomized to the plant-based bean group ended up free of moderate to severe hot flashes, compared to about 95% still suffering in the control group. Lots of other things can help. Whole fennel seeds powdered into capsules to pit them against placebo in a double-blind trial significantly improved menopausal symptoms at a dose of just a teaspoon a day. Fenugreek may also help at a dose of 1.5 teaspoons a day, though not as much as the hormones, but hey, without the side effects, though fenugreek can make your pee smell like maple syrup. Sounds like a bonus. The nice thing about studying spices is that entire servings can be stuffed into pills, so you can do placebo-controlled trials. A quarter teaspoon of black cumin powder a day led to significant improvements in memory and other tests of cognition within 9 weeks compared to placebo. Black sesame seeds, less than a teaspoon a day of ground black sesame seeds stuffed into capsules against placebo, drove down systolic blood pressures by 8 points within a month. Right? If sustained, that alone could decrease the risk of stroke by about 25%, and it's delicious. What else can we powder? Strawberries. Osteoarthritis patients were randomized to 2 ounces of freeze-dried strawberry powder versus a fake strawberry flavored and colored placebo powder, and compared to placebo, the real strawberry significantly decreased total pain, intermittent pain, total knee pain, constant pain, improved disability, overall quality of life. The reason we care so much is osteoarthritis is the leading cause of physical disability in older adults. Yet how do we treat it? Acetaminophen, Tylenol is the first-line treatment. But guess what? It doesn't work. I mean, it works, but just not much better than a sugar pill. But at least it's not going to make matters worse, like other things we doctors have dreamed up, like steroid injections, which actively worsen joint deterioration and offer no greater pain relief than placebo. Or arthroscopic surgery, which may end up tripling our risk of ending up having to get a total knee replacement. I mean, so look, even if the strawberry study is some like total fluke, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Like tastier smoothies? And less than a quarter of a teaspoon of ground ginger a day can beat out placebo for joint pain. Researchers concluded that ginger is recommended as a safe drug for these patients, but by drug, they're just talking about a few pinches of the ground ginger you can get at any store. There was even a study on topical ginger, at least when applied to the scrotum. Paper-thin slices of ginger applied over the inflamed testicles, and the researchers were on the ball, healing nearly 3 times faster than the control group. Okay. So far, we've talked about preserving your bone. We've touched on preserving your bones, bowels, bladder, hair, hormones, and joints, but preserving your mind is the biggest chapter in the book. It's because it's one of our most pressing public health problems, one of the most feared conditions, really, of later life. There's this common misconception that we have no control over whether or not we develop dementia. But the good news is that although Alzheimer's is preventable, is maybe incurable, at least it is preventable. There's an emerging consensus that what's good for our hearts is also good for our heads, because clogging of arteries inside the brain with atherosclerotic plaque is thought to play a role in the development of Alzheimer's disease. This is what our cerebral arteries should look like: open, clean, allowing blood to flow. This is what atherosclerosis in our head looks like: clogged with cholesterol, closing off our arteries, clamping down on blood flow. What kind of arteries do you want in your head? Too much cholesterol in our bloodstream is unanimously recognized as a risk factor for the development of Alzheimer's disease. Those with a total cholesterol of 225 or more, which is not that uncommon, may have nearly 25 times the odds of ending up with amyloid plaques in their brains 10 to 15 years later. Cholesterol explains how the Alzheimer's gene ApoE4 ravages the brain. Why? But after all, ApoE, what does it do? It's the primary cholesterol carrier inside the brain. LDL cholesterol, for those of the bad gene variants of ApoE, averages 40 points higher, but switch people to a diet lower in animal fat, and diet can trump genetics. This may explain the so-called Nigerian paradox, where they have among the highest rates of the Alzheimer's gene, but among the lowest rates of Alzheimer's disease. How is that possible? Genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. The paradox may be explained by their low cholesterol levels, probably due to their diets low in animal fat. Human beings may have evolved to have an LDL cholesterol of around 25, but the average in the Western world is like 120. No wonder heart disease is the leading cause of death in higher income countries. And what's killer number 2? Dementia. This helps explain why the so-called Alzheimer's gene is also the single most important gene when it comes to longevity, too, which is good news, because even if we've been dealt some bad genetic cards, we still may be able to reshuffle the deck with diet. So, in terms of dietary guidelines for the prevention of Alzheimer's, we should center our diets around vegetables, legumes, fruits, and whole grains. In other words, the dietary pillar of lifestyle medicine: whole food, plant-based nutrition. Or even simpler, plants, and more plants. Any plants in particular? Well, note the directors of the Loma Linda's Alzheimer's Prevention Program single out berries and greens. Eating strawberries and spinach can mitigate the age-related cognitive decline in rats, but what about in people? When the cognition of hundreds of twins was followed for over a decade, consuming the berry pigments and less than a quarter cup of blueberries a day or a daily cup of strawberries was associated with slowed cognitive aging by about 4 years. And nearly all the randomized controlled trials of blueberries and cognitive performance found improvements in at least one brain domain, perhaps because blueberry consumption improves blood flow to certain critical regions inside the brain. Now, the one study that flopped, that actually found no benefit, mixed the berries with milk. And we know that the addition of milk prevents the artery protective effects of tea and prevents the bump in antioxidants you'd normally get from eating dark chocolate, and impairs the absorption of those autophagy-enhancing compounds in coffee. What about mixing berries and cream? Well, the antioxidant activity of blueberries is not just impaired by milk. Check this out. Researchers found that the total antioxidant capacity of our bloodstream, measured two different ways, shoots up within an hour of eating a cup and a half of blueberries with water and remains elevated 5 hours later. Great. Now, with milk, I don't know, maybe we'd expect a little less of a bump, but in fact, they ended up even worse than when they started. After eating a whole bowl of blueberries, they ended up with less antioxidant capacity in their body because they ate them with milk. Now, one reason greens may be referred to as an anti-Alzheimer's plant is because dark green leafy vegetables can also improve blood flow in the brain. Randomize older adults to the greens pigments found in a cup a day's worth of cooked kale and see significant improvements in cognitive attention, cognitive flexibility. And those randomized to just a half a cup of kale's worth of cruciferous compound sulforaphane got significant improvements in processing speed and working memory. Here's the rate of cognitive decline in elderly men and women eating a serving a day of green leafies compared to those only eating greens about once every 10 days. Are you sitting down? The rate of decline among those who consume 1 to 2 servings of greens a day was equivalent to being 11 years younger. Right, so now, are you sitting down to a big salad? Greens come up in chapter after chapter. What's the recommendation for preventing age-related macular degeneration, or leading cause of blindness, or even treating it in its earliest stages? Consume a diet high in dark green leafy vegetables. We're talking 2 to 3 servings a day, so at least greens for every lunch and supper, with bonus points for sneaking them into breakfast in like a green smoothie or something. In fact, blending greens can triple the bioavailability of a key vision-protecting nutrient in greens. The main reason greens make it into my anti-aging 8, though, is because the nitrates in a serving or 2 of cooked greens can slow our resting metabolic rate. For the same reason, a little shot of beet juice can allow free divers to hold their breath longer. It improves the efficiency of our mitochondria, the little power plants in our cells, allowing us to effectively extract more energy from each breath. I mean, the only other dietary intervention that can do that is extreme calorie restriction. You know, a candle that burns half as bright burns twice as long. But instead of walking around starving all the time, you can just eat a big salad. What else can greens do? In the Harvard Nurses Health Study, the consumption of leafy greens appeared to protect against the development of frailty. And when put to the test in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, the equivalent of 2/3 of a cup of spinach led to a significant boost in muscle strength, muscle quality, and muscle mass in older men and women. A single cup of cooked greens worth of vegetable nitrates significantly boosted maximum power and velocity in the quads so much it was functionally equivalent to acutely reversing the effects of several decades of aging. A single cup of cooked greens. Popeye was right about the spinach, not the pipe smoking. Of course, when most people think about maintaining muscle mass as they age, I mean, they're not thinking spinach, they're thinking protein. But if you put together all the randomized controlled trials of adding extra protein to the diets of older men and women, you find no evidence that adding protein to the diets of older men and women increases muscle mass or strength. Okay, yeah, but what if you have sarcopenia, that excessive age-related muscle loss? I mean, surely then protein helps, right? No. No significant effect on physical performance or muscle strength. What does work? Exercise. When it comes to age-related muscle loss, it's use it or lose it. Okay, but maybe exercise plus protein? No! Protein supplementation does not significantly augment the effects of strength training in older adults. In fact, one of my anti-aging 8 is protein restriction down to recommended levels. Why do longevity experts like Walter Longo recommend people cut down on protein to live longer? Here's what Luigi Fontana wrote in his book. He's the director of another leading longevity research center. Excess protein won't mass your muscles, but it will accelerate aging. How do you boost the pro-longevity hormone FGF21? Dietary protein restriction. How do you suppress the age-accelerating hormone IGF-1? You do it through dietary protein restriction. How do you suppress the so-called motor of aging enzyme mTOR? Dietary protein restriction. In fact, protein restriction down to recommended levels was the only intervention I could find to slow down all 11 of the aging pathways, which is good news because it's easier to cut down on protein than it is to cut down on everything and walk around starving all the time. And it may even be easier than that. Most or all of the life-extending benefits of protein restriction may be due to restricting just particular toxic amino acids like methionine. In that case, you could even keep your protein intake the same, but just swap sources from animal proteins like meat to plant protein sources like beans. So in humans, methionine restriction can be achieved using a predominantly plant-based diet, which makes methionine restriction feasible as a life extension strategy. Of course, drug companies look at the same data and think, what pharmaceuticals can we develop to mimic these dietary interventions? Anything else to maintain muscle mass other than greens and machines? How about cocoa beans? Older men and women randomized to a single tablespoon of regular cocoa powder a day experienced a significant improvement in muscle mass, strength, and all 4 tests of physical performance. And no, the study was not funded by Hershey's. Unfortunately, the tastiest cocoa doesn't work as well. The control groups here were given the same amount of highly Dutched cocoa, alkalized cocoa, where some of the bitter compounds removed in the Dutching process are the very flavonoids responsible for the benefits. But natural cocoa was so good, it can improve walking performance in those with peripheral artery disease, not only by improving blood flow, but as muscle biopsies showed, by improving mitochondrial activity. This is consistent with improved mitochondrial structure as well, though this study was funded by Hershey's. What else can cocoa do? Increase the circulation within our skin, boosting it 70% within 2 hours after less than a tablespoon. Do that every day, and within 3 months, you end up with significantly improved skin thickness, density, hydration. Keep it up 6 months, you see an improvement in wrinkles, along with improvement in skin elasticity within 12 weeks, all by making your life a little more chocolatey by adding some natural cocoa powder to your daily diet. I put it in my oatmeal with some canned water-packed tart cherries for kind of a chocolate-covered cherry sensation. What else can we do for our skin? Well, there's certainly other antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, glycotoxin-free foods. So when people inquire about a diet that might contribute to younger-looking skin, evidence supports the recommendation to follow a whole food, plant-based diet. But the most important thing to prevent skin aging is avoid the sun. Exposure to sunlight may account for up to 90% of visible skin aging. That's why dermatologists agree there's nothing more important to slow the signs of aging than to protect your skin from the sun. Check out this trucker who spent years getting more sun on the left side of his face through the driver's side window. So, the gold standard is considered to be the use of sunscreen in the daytime and so-called retinoids at night. They're talking about a prescription-only form of topical vitamin A, known as all-trans retinoic acid or tretinoin, sold as Retin A, that has been widely proven to improve skin appearance. The only problem is that it may kill you. A topical tretinoin therapy and all-cause mortality randomized controlled trial had to be stopped early because significantly more people were dying in the retinoic acid group compared to the placebo cream group. So what can we use? Topical nicotinamide, also known as niacinamide, is described as one of the best studied anti-aging skin cream ingredients, though that's not saying much, but it has been shown to reduce yellowing, blotchiness, wrinkling, dark spots, and aging facial skin. For example, significantly reducing crow's feet wrinkles around the eyes. This was a split-face study in which 64% of the niacinamide side eye wrinkles had moderate or marked improvement compared to 0% of the placebo side eyes. Topical vitamin C offers similar improvements over placebo in wrinkles, sourness, skin tone. Unfortunately, vitamin C is unstable in creams, turning an unsightly brown when it oxidizes. So instead, the skincare industry uses these more stable vitamin C esters or derivatives, but there's no evidence that these have comparable effects because they're either not absorbed or they minimally convert to the active form. But the good news is you can make your own. The 10% solution used in the study retails for a ridiculous $127 an ounce, but you can make a DIY solution more than 2,000 times cheaper by simply buying ascorbic acid in bulk and mixing 3 grams into 30 grams of water at a cost of about a nickel per ounce. Drip a few drops in the palm of your hand and rub it on your face, neck, and upper chest. Just don't get it into your eyes. And look, you can do the same thing with niacinamide, which is even more ridiculously overpriced, but you can buy it in bulk as well for a 5,000% discount. I could go on, and the book certainly does, but let me close out by going back to the basics. From the anti-aging journal, Rejuvenation Research, finally, a regimen to extend human life expectancy. Was it some exotic new stem cell treatment or gene therapy? No. It was a reference to this Harvard analysis. More than 100,000 men and women were followed for decades in just a few basic lifestyle behaviors, appeared to translate into 12 to 14 years of extra lifespan for the average 50-year-old. So even at age 50, you may be able to add an extra dozen years to your lifespan. Even at age 70, there's still about 10 years on the table. And if you clean up your life before age 50, nearly 18 years may be up for grabs based on these simple common sense behaviors. That's the kind of life extension that we see extrapolating from these laboratory animal experiments, but after decades of research, hundreds of millions of dollars later, efforts to translate those results into humans have largely been in vain. Right? Yet here we are with human data suggesting dramatic life extension is available to all of us right here, right now. We already have that $1 trillion anti-aging pill that biotech has been promising us. It just has to be administered in the produce aisle and the gym. Turning back the clock, not with a drug or a DeLorean, but just by eating and living more healthfully. What do I mean? Well, a midlife shift between the ages of 45 and 64, even the barest of minimums. We're talking 5 daily servings of fruits and vegetables, walking even 20 minutes a day, maintaining a healthy weight, not smoking, can result in a substantial reduction in mortality, even in the immediate future. We're talking a 40% lower risk of dying in the subsequent 4 years. So if you are between the ages of 45 and 64 and want to cut your risk of dying by 2028 by 40%, it's simple. The researchers conclude that making the necessary changes to adhere to a healthy lifestyle is extremely worthwhile. In middle age is certainly not too late to act. We hold the power. Okay. So I was only able to get to about 100 studies. How Not to Age ended up with over 13,000 citations. So I was only able to cover about 1% of the book. For the other 99%, you can go to your local public library or you can buy a book out here. Happy to sign it. And all proceeds I receive from the sales of all my books goes directly to charity. I just want you and your loved ones to enjoy the longest, healthiest life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Greger. Isn't he awesome?
Hi, Dr. Greger.
Hello. I'm just going to start passing this around. If anyone is not signed up to my free email newsletter, we can start that at the corner of the room and just pass it around.
I actually have 2 questions, but can I ask both? Is that okay?
Whip it out.
All right, awesome.
That's what you get for being first in line. 2 questions. Go for it.
Okay. Okay, so question 1. A major risk factor for breast cancer is excessive body weight. God's joke is that if you, it can be really difficult for postmenopausal women to lose weight. So what advice can you give to someone who's already whole food plant-based faced with that problem?
I have an entire book for you called How Not to Diet. The first half of the book, I talk about the benefits of whole food plant-based diet. The second half of the book is regardless of what you eat, here's the 21 tweaks, right? Everything proven in randomized controlled trials to accelerate the loss of body fat. So yeah, check out the second half of How Not to Diet.
Okay, I have it, thank you. I'll reread it. Second question. A recent article in the Washington Post points out that the life expectancy in the US peaked in 2014, then drifted downward. And so they said among the wealthy nations, the US in recent decades went from the middle of the pack to being an outlier, and it continues to fall further and further behind. So in your opinion, what would you attribute this trend to?
So the trend starting in 2014, it was due to the obesity epidemic. Now raising the first generation of children in the United States to live shorter lives on average than their parents. And remember, this was before COVID knocked a few years off our life expectancy. So before, we were living longer lives but sicker lives. So we're actually living fewer years in health. But now we're not even living sicker lives because they're cutting it short. But we have the global burden of disease study showing that there's one main reason for that, and that's diet, followed by smoking.
Hi, Dr. Greger. Thank you for taking my question. So Consumer Reports recently published about the ill effects of alcohol, and I didn't hear you mention anything about the ill effects of alcohol tonight. So can you share your thoughts on that?
You want a little, here we go. I was hoping you'd ask that. Let's pop up. So there we go. What about alcohol? Look, that's from plants. What's the problem? Sorry to be Dr. Buzzkill, but alcohol appears to be the 7th leading cause of death and disability on planet Earth. The safest level of drinking is none. But wait a second. What about that famous J curve, where light to moderate drinkers appeared to have lower mortality rates than the teetotalers at 0 drinks a day? This appears to be an artifact of the systemic misclassification of former drinkers as if they were lifelong abstainers. This leads to what's called the sick quitter effect, where the reason a person may be a non-drinker is because the drinking made them sick. So, of course, no wonder they're not doing so, the non-drinkers are not doing so well, making current drinkers look good in comparison. It's the same reason you can find higher mortality rates among people who quit smoking compared to those who continue to smoke. Why? Because why'd they quit? They quit because they got seriously ill from smoking. It's not that abstention led to poor health, but rather that poor health led to abstention. So when the researchers went back And control for this error of misclassifying former drinkers as if they were abstainers, the J-curve disappears. So no apparent benefit anymore to moderate drinking. In other words, compared to true abstainers, the more alcohol, the more disease, with no apparent protection with low levels of consumption. So wait a second, even red wine? Unfortunately, interventional trials show that wine consumption causes inflammation within hours of consumption, both red and white, significantly more than just drinking like sugar water. And you can get a surge of fat in your bloodstream that you don't get drinking de-alcoholized red wine, like non-alcoholic wine where the alcohol has been removed. So wait a second, what about just taking supplements of that red wine compound resveratrol? Oh, you mean the compound showed to triple the loss of brain volume compared to placebo? No, thank you. And while I'm on the subject, anyone want to hear what the healthiest beverage is? Oh, you don't need that. All right, well, good. Okay, good. Next question. Thank you.
That was a great question. Thank you. And both of my college-age kids are here, so great question.
Hi, Dr. Greger. I have a question about children. So after 1 year old...
Don't eat them.
Good advice. After 1 year old, do you suggest that kids still drink dairy milk, or do you prefer or suggest that they drink full-fat coconut milk?
Ugh.
Or what do you think?
No, so they should drink human breast milk as long as possible,
Right.
as much as possible.
But if that's not available?
And then, I mean, after age 1, they can actually start with solid foods. There's really no reason. So milk is for babies,
Right.
kind of by definition, right? So milk, it's a food of infancy. And so we're the only animals that drink milk after infancy, and of course the only ones that drink milk from another species, which is a little weird.
Right.
But so there's really no reason to have milk at all. I mean, but it's just like, there's like a breakfast cereal industry that just like convinces
Right.
people, you gotta have some kind of milk. What if you're not
Right.
gonna? And so there's all these plant-based milks that have popped up. The healthiest is probably unsweetened soy milk.
Okay.
But again, there's really no reason you need to have any kind of milk at all in
Right.
your diet.
The pediatricians were suggesting full-fat dairy milk after age 1 for fat keeping, I guess.
Tell them that, well, I mean, so the USDA considers soy milk to be equivalent to full-fat dairy milk, and so I just switch over to soy instead.
Great. I was waiting a long time to ask
Oh,
you that.
great.
My
I'm so
baby was
glad.
a baby, so thank you.
Hello, Dr. Michael Gray. My name is Matt Rivera, and I just wanted to ask you, because of the age of 16, as a junior in high school, I became the happy recipient of the diagnosis of stage 3 anaplastic astrocytoma, and more or less, you're real happy, you're getting ready to get out of school and high school and everything like that, but more or less you find out that you just got one more thing to conquer and overcome, all that stuff and things like that. But I've been chill and everything like that, following my higher power, God and everything, Jesus and all that stuff, and have chosen, to just eventually go get on the whole food plant-based track and everything like that. But more or less, the first year I crapped everything up and then decided to start, eating healthier, like going healthier raw and all that stuff. But more along the lines, I just wanted to ask you, so what can I do to kill brain cancer cells?
So so that's my next book. So stay tuned till December 2028.
Sounds fun.
And I'll tell you then.
Okay, next time I'll ask you, what's up, Doc?
I mean, it can't hurt to eat healthy in the meanwhile.
And yeah.
But whether or not it's actually going to affect the progression of cancer, that's what I'm going to find out.
Yeah, so recently, this morning, I had some lovely oats.
Great.
All right.
I'm all in favor.
Boats of oats.
Do it.
And some blueberry oats and stuff, all that.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thanks to that woman back there.
Yay.
Thanks to that woman back there.
I think she raised her hand. All right.
I'm so glad it was helpful. You did all the work, though. I just put it out there. Exactly.
Hi. Thanks for coming, Dr. Greger. I met you earlier today. I just want to tell you, you saved my life.
Yes. Oh, my God, this is an incredible story.
Yeah, but the reason I'm here is because of what you've done. I've lost 176 pounds since January 12th last year. My LDL is a 40. My total cholesterol is 90. And it's all been whole food plant-based.
Amazing.
And just appreciate everything you've done. My question, though, is this. I followed the Daily Dozen. I did the 21 weeks.
Love it.
So we're going to be doing 24, 25 weeks with cocoa powder, with
good.
wheat germ.
Yeah.
Is there anything on the horizon to update the app?
So we update. So he's talking about the Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen app, free app on iPhone, Android. Started with just the Daily Dozen from How Not to Die. Then we came out to How Not to Diet. We added that you can switch over to kind of weight loss mode, and you have the 21 tweaks. And so we were thinking, well, we'll just, for How Not to Age, we'll add the anti-aging 8. But it turns out that it was so expensive to add the How Not to Diet. It seems crazy. Anyone knows any like pro bono app developers, but it was like $100,000. Just to add like the little section, and we just felt that like for $100,000, like we could do so much good in the world, and we just couldn't justify it, and so we're waiting for some app developer to come up to us and be like, "I will do it at a discount."
Gotcha. Okay.
So hopefully that'll happen, but yeah.
No, it's all good. But thank you for everything you've done and that you do. And I got the cheat codes because of you. Thank you.
Fantastic. So glad you came.
Say how much weight you lost.
Oh, the app was Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen.
176 pounds.
176-pound weight loss.
Since January 16th last year. And my doctor said if I didn't do something, I was going to die. So I had to do something. And
I love
got started with How Not to Die.
And hopefully we don't have to wait to be told we're going to die before actually making a change in our lifestyle.
Hi, I have just a couple of practical questions. For the wheat germ,
it
doesn't mention, should it be raw or toasted, or does it not matter?
Whatever you want.
Okay, and also, just this evening you kept saying for mussels, a cup of cooked greens. Do they have to be cooked?
They don't have to be cooked, but if you eat them uncooked, you got to eat a lot more greens.
I eat like a pound a day.
I love it. Keep it up.
Okay, but they don't have to be cooked.
They don't have to be cooked.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Greger. I really enjoyed your talk. My question is, you mentioned about the blueberries and how it boosts your antioxidant, but milk mitigates that or takes it away. What about the other milks?
Oh, fantastic question.
Almond milk.
The problem with dairy milk is this protein called casein, which is a dairy protein. What it does is it binds to the polyphenol phytonutrients found in these plant foods, and so you flush them out instead of absorbing them. And so the question is, okay, well, what about soy proteins? What about all these other proteins? So only one other milk has been tested, soy milk, and thankfully it doesn't have the same binding problem, and so it does not impair the absorption of antioxidants. And the other types of milk, like oat milk and almond milk, have so little protein that I wouldn't expect any problems either. So it's probably just a dairy milk. The only other possibility may be like pea milk, based on split peas. It's never been tested, and it does actually have a high protein content. So if that had a similar effect to casein, then there'd be a problem. But we haven't tested it.
Okay, pea milk, but not pea protein in a smoothie.
It might. We don't know.
So have your blueberries separate.
So, right, I would presume that the peas are closer to the soybeans than they are to the cow protein, but, we just don't know until the studies are done.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Stacy from Toronto.
Hello, Stacy from Toronto. I'm speaking in Toronto.
What?
Why'd you come all the way down here when I could have come to you?
When is that happening?
I don't know. I can look it up on my calendar.
Oh my gosh.
It's on
all right,
there.
I'll see it now. I've been plant-based since Your How Not to Die for 7 years, completely preventative, and I went cold turkey. I was telling somebody that, and they said, well, actually, it's probably cold tofu.
Cold tofu, yeah.
We'll change that now. So my mind is blown about the reducing protein as you age, which was so interesting, what you said about muscle.
Yeah.
I had a pickleball injury, got an MRI, shows that I have half the cartilage missing in my knee. I was wondering, because maybe I haven't been concentrating on protein, or is there something you can do because cartilage doesn't grow back?
Oh, absolutely. So that's the entire joint chapter focuses on osteoarthritis. I have a little bit on back pain, but it's almost all osteoarthritis, which is this thinning of the cartilage in the knee joint. So just check it out.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Lots you can do about it.
Hi, doctor. Thank you so much for coming. She actually asked my question about the other milks.
Oh,
the
yeah,
almond
okay,
milk.
all right.
But also, I'm missing most of my small intestine,
Ooh.
lots of my large intestines, and I don't absorb well. So everything says if you're trying to build muscle mass that you should have 1 gram of protein per ideal pound of body weight. Are things like the whey and soy protein substitutes with almond milk, is that an acceptable route to take?
So when you say, they all say that 1 gram per hour, by all, what you're saying is all people trying to sell you protein.
Or
And
fitness trainers
so if
or
you
whatever,
look at
yeah.
so if you look at the National Academies of Medicine, which is the most prestigious medical body in the United States, or the World Health Organization, or EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, every single one of them, every international authority says you do not need more than 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram body weight, which is 0.36 grams per pound, not 1 gram, 0.36 pound. So I would not. I encourage you to get your protein the same way you get your carbohydrates and your fat, all your macronutrients, through whole plant food. So instead of eating table sugar, right, you eat, most table sugar comes from beets these days. So eat a beet, don't eat table sugar, right? Similarly, oil is like the table sugar of the fat kingdom, right? You take a walnut, you remove all the nutrition, all the fiber, all the minerals, you're left with just basically straight calories, a little fat-soluble vitamin E or something, but there's almost no nutrition left. Right. And same thing, it's like when you take something like a kidney bean and you just rip out all the nutrition left with just a protein isolate. These protein powders, it's like, why would you do that? Why would you strip away all that nutrition to get a macronutrient, which we are in general getting in excess. Having said that, if you are a burn victim or if you have cubitus ulcers or you're recovering from major surgery, you do need higher protein. If you're recovering from wounds, healing, if you're recovering from tattoo, if you're healing from a tattoo, you need more protein. If you have an illness, your immune system churns through lots of protein. But if you're just a healthy person, where most people are getting actually too much protein for their good.
Mine applies for not being able to absorb well.
Okay, so I would talk to a dietitian to find out exactly. It depends on exactly what parts of your intestine you don't have, and you can actually do what's called a nitrogen balance study to see actually how much protein kind of going in versus coming out to see if you really do need more than you think you do.
Okay.
So you can get it tested.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm curious if pasta made from legumes, you get the same benefit from eating the actual legumes.
Oh, fantastic question. So pasta made from legumes is healthier than pasta made from grains, just because beans, remember that list of the top 5 things, the worst things about the American diet. Number 1, not eating enough legumes. Number 2 is not eating enough whole grains. So having some whole wheat pasta, fantastic. But even better, we having like the chickpea pasta or the black bean pasta, all sorts of great lentil pastas. Unfortunately, not as good as actually eating whole beans. Similarly, eating hummus is not as good as eating chickpeas. And the reason is, no matter how well you chew, you're going to get little bits of beans that make it down, that act as carriers of some of that starch, because the fibrous cell walls are indigestible. And so if you grind up your beans to make like a spread or something, you're releasing all that starch, and unfortunately none of it makes down to your colon. You get the fiber down there, which is great, but you're missing out on these other prebiotics. Whereas we eat food kind of the way nature intended, not floured, not powdered, not blended, we get these little bits of this bountiful prebiotics for our good gut bugs, and that's really the best way to do it.
That's what I thought you'd say.
Hi, Dr. Greger. Thanks for being here. So, if eating, I'm 63 years old, and I've spent my life eating the standard American diet, not knowing better, not having anything but that put on the table when I was growing up. And then I fed my own kids.
Of course.
Happy Meals and Lunchables.
You want them to be happy. Come on.
I wanted them to be healthy, and I thought that's what I was doing. And then some years ago, I married a woman who's 40 years a plant-based vegetarian.
Smart woman.
And she's dragging me over the coals at every meal. It seems like you're at the table
Okay,
with
yeah,
us.
but you know why? It's because she loves you.
Right.
Right? If she didn't love you, she'd be like, no, have some more wings. Come on,
Right.
come on.
I'm pretty sure she loves you, too.
Excellent. That's nice.
I guess my question is that I'm a product of the society I grew up in.
Sure.
Eating the foods that I thought was right. I didn't grow up in a blue zone. I grew up in America.
Right.
Why is this legal to feed us like this?
Right.
Is every
That's a great question. Yeah.
Every town I drive through, it's fast
I know.
food,
Yeah,
it's
we're just getting bombarded.
The TV commercials,
Everything,
drive
right.
me crazy after I think I'm full.
Yeah.
Why
It's
is
so
it
true.
legal to do this?
I know. Right, especially since it's our #1 killer. Right, and so you can think back. So a parallel that I talk about in many of my videos is like, let's go back to the 50s and look at the smoking industry. So back in the 50s, the average per capita cigarette consumption was 4,000 cigarettes a year. The average person walking around smoked half pack a day. It was just normal. Most doctors smoked. In fact, the American Medical Association told people that smoking in moderation was actually good for you, right? And so yet there were decades of science, starting in the 1930s, linking lung cancer and smoking. By the time that smoking rates started to decline, 1964, so they went up, 1964, then they went down pretty much every single year since, and down came these beautiful curves of lung cancer deaths dropping like a rock. One of the greatest public health victories of all time. What happened in 1964? The first Surgeon General's report against smoking was published. And in that report, they cited 7,000 studies. You'd think maybe after the first 6,000 studies, it could give people a little heads up or something, but no, it had a very powerful industry, right, that was trying to suppress the science. And so we're in a similar situation today where you have the evidence, we have this mountain of evidence, but it has yet to translate into the powers that be just kind of officially recognizing it. Like, why can't you go on the CDC website and it says processed meat is category 1 carcinogen? It causes cancer, right? These little Lunchables that we're giving our kids is causing colorectal cancer, the #1 cancer killer for non-smokers. Okay, so, but you're not going to see that. Why? Because we have, I live in D.C., within the Beltway, there's a very powerful industry, the agribusiness. And the dairy industry, $100 million in lobbying. It's like just mind blowing, right? And so, of course, that's why why is milk like the USDA school lunch program? They mandate you have to have milk. Why? You think the apple growers would be first in line before? No, but it's because they don't have the money. And you say, why don't they have the money? And it's because fruits and vegetables are like the worst thing to sell. They go bad. They're perishable. They rot on the shelf. You want a snack cake that sits on the shelf for weeks, right? That's how you make money. Or even better, sell people brown, bubbly sugar water. It's like all profit, taxpayer-subsidized sugar. For a few pennies, you get dollars per bottle. Oh, my God. And so it's not like the CEO of Coca-Cola is sitting around thinking, how can I contribute to the childhood obesity epidemic? They're thinking, how can I satisfy the next quarterly earnings for my shareholders? And if they don't think about that, they'll get booted out and they'll be replaced by somebody else who will think about that. The system is just set up. That's why you're never going to see an ad on Super Bowl for sweet potatoes. Because they're not even branded products. Even a sweet potato grower is not going to put an ad for sweet potatoes. You'll buy their competitors' sweet potatoes. Like, the whole system is just set up to promote, to just bombard you with fast food and junk food, because that's where the money is, right? Often produce is actually a lost leader in supermarkets. They actually lose money selling you produce, but it gets you in the store, so you'll buy the stuff that really makes the money, like the soda and the chips and all that crap. So these companies do not have the best interests of your family at heart. So that means we've got to take, until the system changes, we need to take control over our own health, over our family's health, over our community's health, because it's a matter of life and death. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's sign some books.
Okay, everyone, before you leave, we want to thank Dr. Greger once again. Polk Wellness Professionals, the sponsors here are giving Dr. Greger over $2,000. We hope that you have appreciated this enough to drop your money in those receptacles back there. So please do so. Once again, let's give a big round of applause to Dr. Michael Greger.